And welcome to Underdog Reviews.
No, I'm not really going to use that voice. However, I wish to apologize for not having a review out for so long. I have my reasons. It's not a very good excuse. I'm going to spare you the excuses, but it's finally here. In short, however, I finished the review ages ago. It was kind of boring. I decided I want to try something new, and I decided to put my face in the review. Why am I dressed like this? It's in my name, KrazyKain. Enjoy the review, guys. So, the Blackwell Trilogy is actually a series of adventure games on the AGS engine. I want to point out the first and main issue before really getting into the review. Now, there's a lot of very good free AGS adventure games, namely the Cho Mito series by Yahtzee and the Ben Jordan series by Grundislav Games. So, would you actually pay for these games? That's kind of why I'm here, isn't it?
No, I'm having a cigarette.
Great.
These are actually three games, three different games, and I'm going to be reviewing them as a whole, mainly because the best way to buy them is as a bundle. I'd also like to get one thing out of the way. I don't normally review adventure games. I just don't really know how. Their main draw are the story and the puzzles, but if you spoil the story and the puzzles, you spoil the game. So, bear with me here.
Hey.
What?
For the uninitiated, a point-and-click adventure game puts you in the shoes of the protagonist. Rather than having you fight or shoot your way out, testing your reflexes, as most games do, or your skills, the games are all about interacting with your environment and figuring out what items are used where, who to talk to, what to say to them, that sort of thing. Some can be very wacky and require a very strange and warped sense of logic, games like Sam and Max or Day of the Tentacle. Many adventure game veterans actually like these. I, for one, though, prefer the more real-life logic type of adventure games, and there are quite a few of those.
Well,
The Blackwell series mainly fits into the real-life logic type of game, as all puzzles seem plausible at the least. Granted, some suspension of disbelief might be necessary, but I mean, they're games about ghosts. The first game has you playing as Rosangela Blackwell, a columnist who doesn't really like her job. And she's also a loner. Her only family, her aunt, just died. And the game starts with Rosangela scattering her ashes. As the story goes on, Rose's boss tells her to investigate a teen suicide. After not too long, Joey Malone shows up. He's the ghostly guide who becomes the series' sidekick. And of course, Rosa must accept her role as a medium helping ghosts pass over. In the second game, you actually play as Rosangela's aunt, the one who died in the first game, and it's actually a prequel to the series. The third has you back as Rosangela further into the future, and she's sort of more become used to her role and, you know, has more of a connection with Joey Malone.
you just seem like a guy who could use some.
One of the strongest points of the series is actually the character development. Rosangela, for example, starts out as a loner, bordering on paranoid in fact, and she's very reluctant to accept her role as a medium. But as the first game goes on, she subtly gets more into the role, and by the time she's reintroduced into the third game, she's, you know, really good friends with the character from the first game, and develops a much better relationship with Joey. Clearly, she's also a lot more comfortable with her new responsibilities, and herself in general.
Someone here says she knows you. That must be Rosa.
The superb voice acting really does help the character development in the series. But it does vary in quality, especially in the first game. Some characters sound pretty good, others can go from okay to pretty damn annoying. Unfortunately, Rosangela would be okay. She does a good enough job, but just about everything she says sounds kinda whiny. But it's not that bad, it doesn't ruin the game or anything. Probably the most annoying voice, however, would be the Bronx-accented punk goth roommate character. The second game has vastly improved voice acting, and the experience, which is already good in the first game, gets so much better because of this. The third game has completely different voice actors, which are much, much better than the first game. But it is a bit odd that suddenly all the characters sound incredibly different from one another than they did in the first game. Like, for example, her best friend suddenly developing an Indian accent. The only character's voice who remains exactly the same in all three games is Joey Malone.
I'm fine.
The graphics are good from the get-go, looking very much like a LucasArts or Sierra classic adventure game. However, that doesn't actually mean that they don't improve with each game, because they do. By the third game, the characters' animations and detail are all superb, as are all the backgrounds. They look amazing. The same goes for the game's musical scores. They're all masterfully done and fit very well within the games.
She writes ghost stories, Monique.
Nish, please.
The gameplay is essentially your standard fare for an adventure game. The only notable features are, for example, you can't use items on the outside world in the first game. If an item has to be used on something or someone, usually you just have to interact and it'll be done automatically if the item's in your inventory. Secondly, all games have some sort of information center you have to constantly come and go to find things out, like addresses, phone numbers, all sorts of information. Your computer in the first and third game, and a phone book in the second. And this also gets better with each game. In the first game, it's a sort of click the dialogue method as if you were talking to someone, which is alright. The second game, you have to type in the word you're looking for. This works much better, because you actually have to think about what to search for. In the third game, you've got a full desktop interface as if you're using her computer, which is much cooler. It's got its own browser, email clients, and search engine. Thirdly, you have a notebook, and as you learn new information, it is put into the notebook. The most interesting thing about this is that you can compare the notes to learn new information, and cross-examine the facts. It's a huge part of the game. However, and curiously, the third game omits this feature.
Nope, doesn't ring a bell.
The puzzles all seem to make logical sense for the most part. I think I only ever seriously got stuck once in the second game, and it was because I had to repeat the same dialogue option to get a different response, and I just didn't think about it. I figured the same dialogue option would result in saying the same thing and getting the same response. I was wrong. Back to my initial issue, why would anyone pay for this game? Well, it's packing production value, that's why. It might not be better than the Chomito series per se, but its voice acting, amazing original music, and all these little things, they justify paying for it. I personally think you should get the trilogy as a pack, and don't bother any other way. But if you absolutely must buy, I don't know, only one of the games, go for the second. The first is unfortunately the weakest of the three, despite being a very good game, and the second is the most standalone. The third references the other two, and you get the most enjoyment if you've played them.
Anytime.
If you're a fan of games like Beneath the Steel Sky, Ben Jordan, Flight of the Amazon Queen, or the Chomito's games, then chances are you want this game already, and I do suggest you get it. If you aren't sure about the adventure genre, then I'd suggest you try one of the other games, like the Ben Jordan or Chomito's, because these are free, and they give you a good feeling of what to expect, especially the Ben Jordan. They've got a bit of a similar theme. If you outright hate the adventure genre, then clearly you are wasting your time and just need to avoid the games.
I've had a lot on my mind. Yeah, that's why I'm here. I thought you could use someone to talk to. Did my wife
Anyway, overall, I'd say that these are three very good games, and they're high quality, they're worth the money. I really do think you should get them. If you're into the adventure genre, this should be in your collection. If they came out back then, they would have just been just as good as they are now. So, do you like adventure games? Get it. Simple as that.